Would you like some tea?
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll never forget my grandmothers telling me what they thought was going to happen when I was an adult.
Mm.
Grandma said, the world's going to go to hell in a handbasket, you'll see. And here, let me give you a few things to prepare you for that. And never before, and probably never after, did I forget this sense that something was coming. And now here we are. I think we've arrived at this very strange place. And so the listening for the wisdom of the ancestors, I feel like it's time. What do you think?
I think it's really time. I think this is the meant to be time.
Yeah.
To wake up.
Wake up.
Wake up and find your ancestors. This would be the time to connect.
This would be the time. Sounds like a good idea. I think that's good. And that's why we called you all here today to this Red Thread Circle and Cafe. I'm Shiloh Sophia, and I'm here with Spirit Warrior Carmen Baraka for Power Creatives TV. Our theme this season is herstory. And when Carmen and I were speaking about what is it we want to say to the women and the men who are gathered in our collective communities, what do we want to bring to them? And Carmen chose this topic. And I think we have a story to start with.
Yes.
A story of someone who is not an ancestor yet, but who had a recent experience with the fires that we've had here in Northern California. We're just coming off of week 3 of a very intense experience. And so I've invited Carmen to speak to us about what happened with her family.
Okay. Well, it's a perfect example to begin this program talking about ancestral wisdom, because my dad, who is fighting 2 stage 4 cancers and lives in Calistoga, we were sort of running out of time with him, and we all knew that, and so we had this great spaghetti fest with him. And my son flew in from New Mexico, and it was just a beautiful occasion. And we're like, okay, Dad, because he has the end-of-life service now, that if you can't, live with your pain anymore, which is a beautiful thing.
Wasn't he calling it the Last Supper?
Yeah, he called it the Last Supper. He goes, all right, the Last Supper, because Kayla was there, my granddaughter, who has really bad ulcerative colitis for many years, and she had just finally had her surgery that allowed her to finally eat spaghetti. And so she was like, oh, spaghetti, I just can't wait to have sauce. And at the same time, my dad goes, you know what I really miss is just a homemade spaghetti. I'm like, we are having the great spaghetti fest. And anyway, so we had that, and then on Sunday we left and drove back off to Arcata. And then I woke up at 3:30 in the morning, something like that. And I woke up kind of in a panic, like something's wrong. Mm-hmm. Something's wrong. And I told my partner, I said, something's wrong. And she's like, well, check into everyone, because I go to my beloveds and I'm like, what is your energy? I'm like, everyone seems okay, but something's wrong. Mm-hmm. And I tried to go back to sleep, and then around 4 in the morning, I got a text, and it said that the fires were happening, and I was like, oh, okay. I don't know if that was on Sunday. Yeah. I think a couple of days. That started on Sunday, but I think it might have been, when did they evacuate them? Tuesday. Anyway, the point is, whatever day, the next day. I knew when the fires had started, and then my dad was okay the next day, and then all the phones went out.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I got a text that said, in the middle of the night, and they're going to be evacuating everyone. And then by 4 or something, I was trying to get a hold of people. I couldn't, but I realized that, I'm like, okay, they evacuated everyone. I called. I did get through to someone, and they said they evacuated. Anyway.
Because they evacuated the entire town.
Yeah, Calistoga.
So it's pretty major.
It's very major. And I have no communication with my dad because the phones are out and on and on. But what I did know is my dad was still there.
So you had that feeling, that connection with him, that everyone else is evacuated,
oh my God,
but Dad is not.
Everyone's out of there. My dad's still in his house. I could feel it so strongly. So I called again, and I got through, and the woman there said, no, we marked every house. We know they're elderly people. My dad's 93. So, don't worry. And I'm like, no, my dad's in that, she's just not believing me, right? But I know what I'm feeling. So what happened was, I have no way to get a hold of my dad. I know that he's still in his house, and I'm freaking out. But they had evacuated everyone, and so then here's what happened with my dad. So my dad wakes up, because now he wakes up late because he takes medicine, and he usually doesn't get up until 9:30 or 10, where he used to get up at 7. So now it's like 7:30 in the morning, and he said he's laying in bed, sound asleep, and a voice comes to his bedroom door, and says, "Tony, get up." Really strong, and he's just all startled, like, what is going on? So he got up, and he washed up and did his thing, and he just was like, what? It scared him kind of, because he thought, well, is this the death call? He's at that place. He's like, the voice, right? So he goes in the kitchen and starts doing his breakfast and doing his, his routine. And the voice tells him, "Tony, go to coffee." So every Wednesday, my dad goes to coffee. And he's decided he'll never be able to go again because he can't get up that early and go meet his friends. And so he hasn't been there for 2 months. So he gets dressed all nice because he's going to coffee to talk with everyone. And the voice keeps saying, he's doing dishes, he's trying to do stuff, and the voice keeps saying, "Go to coffee." So he finally goes out the door, and he said, it felt kind of eerily quiet. And the manager was just locking up the building, and he said, he's like, "Tony, what the hell are you doing here?" And he's like, "Coming for coffee and donuts." He's like, "Everyone's been evacuated. You were the last one, and I was just locking up the building. If you wouldn't have come out right at that moment, I would have been gone. And my dad would be there, everyone thinking he was already gone. And, that was his."
And he felt like it was his mom.
It was his mom.
It was mom. Tony, get up.
Yeah, not the voice of his mom. This is really important with spirit, when you're working with spirit. Because I think that if you heard his mom's voice, he would be so freaked out. Like, I'm really dying now. I'm really think about it. Spirit can morph into whatever is needed.
Yeah.
That voice was powerful and strong, and he just knew that he had to do that.
Yeah.
But I think about if he would have went to coffee and everything was closed and empty and everyone was gone, and he can't walk very well, and there's no phone.
Right.
Well, eventually I would have called the police because I knew he was there.
Right. And then something amazing happened, that her father, Tony, and her granddaughter, Kayla, were able to spend over a week together. That never would have happened
Never.
at Carmen and
And
Teresa's
that
home.
was his last wish, was I wish I could make it to the redwoods and sit in the redwoods and look out from your deck. And it's just really a beautiful thing. So we went and picked him up. It was sort of apocalyptic conditions. There was only one road open. There was fires everywhere. It was really a moment in time, and I was so concerned. The other thing that happened for him, because this is the spirit, this is the ancestors I'm speaking of, is that if he would have went with all the other people, they took him to the college, and it was so overcrowded with hundreds of people that they would have had, and it's hard on him, right? They would have had to take him in that bus filled with people,
Right.
Put him in another bus. They were taking, anyway, the point is, he went in the police had called the bus just for him. He was all by himself. And they took him to a church where no one was at yet. I have a picture of him. I was so concerned. And they said there's this really nice lady talking to him, and he's eating a banana, and all the cots behind him are empty. So he was saved by grace. Like, I know that my grandmother, who was a shaman, was looking out for him. So all day long, he was cared for by everyone that was there. And it was just a beautiful thing. And so he was cared for in the way he couldn't have been cared for, and he really needed that care all day long, and people didn't start coming until the evening. And I just want to say something about the dedication of people and who serve in crisis. The one woman sat by my dad's side and took care of him till we got there at 8, and she was only supposed to be there till 5. But she wouldn't leave my dad. That is grace.
We send out our thanksgiving and prayers to all of those who served. It's it's unfortunate that we have to have a crisis in order to see how amazing everyone is. Our friends have been saying, wow, if we could just continue this level of courtesy and kindness and service, we'd have a different world.
I know.
So it was nice to see it, and I'm so glad that that was able to happen, which we wanted to tell that story as kind of a lead-in of the nearness of support. And most indigenous cultures, like I can't say every single one, but most indigenous cultures have a relationship with the ancestors, the ones who came before, who were able to communicate and to support us and to guide us to not make the same mistakes and to call us from slumber. And yet at a certain point in history, the different religions began separating us from that connectivity. And so we've had, a handful of generations here in many cultures where we aren't encouraged to draw from the support. And there's many religions who even speak against it. So there's actually even a lot of fear about connecting to where we've been, about where we're going.
Exactly.
And so Carmen, coming from Native American and Peruvian tradition, has maintained consistent relationship with her ancestors and started actually being a spirit woman as a spirit girl at the age of 7.
Yeah. Yes, I began my journey at 7, and that's when I began to see spirit and understand spirit, and I knew that this was my path. I felt so fortunate because I never had to wonder, what do I want for a career? I may have had career because I needed to make money in that way, but I always knew that it was about service to others, and I was the most excited about that, always. Mm-hmm. So when I was 7 and began to see spirit for the first time, it started to give me the understanding of how the veil works, how thin a veil between the seen and the unseen. Mm-hmm. And so since no one took that away from me as a child, they had the understanding of knowing about, because my grandmother was a shaman woman, and my house there were many stories of spirit, so I wasn't afraid. But the first time that, and I should tell this story quickly because it's an important story. So I'm 7, and this spirit comes to the door of the bedroom because apparently my brother and sister had a different father. But, back in the day, children, you don't tell them the whole story. Mm-hmm. I didn't know we had a different father. Mm-hmm. This is the guy used to come and pick them up and take them to the circus, and why didn't he take me? No one said, but that's their dad. It was like,
right.
You were too young to know that. It was like, why doesn't he take me? They come back with balloons and. But anyway, he had passed away, and I heard that he passed away, and I just thought he was their friend. But then this one night, there he was standing at the door. His spirit as clear as could be. And he walked over to my sister. We had twin beds, and he walked to my sister's bed, and he sat, and he just looked at her, and he held her. And he just the love, you could just feel the love. Mm-hmm. And I was frightened because it was the first time.
Right.
But then night after night after night. And he never looked at me because I think I would have had a heart attack, But he did the same thing every night. He would stand at the door. He would walk slowly over. He was just loving his daughter. So what did that tell me about spirit very clearly? And that's why I wanted to speak on this today, that we have to recognize that our mothers and our grandmothers and those who love us do not leave us. They're just there in the unseen. So when you've lost your beloved, mm-hmm. it's a beautiful thing to know. And time again through my whole life, I've seen that. They're right there next to you. They're not gone. And the thing is, some people tell me, well, I didn't have that great a relationship with my mother, or
right.
I didn't have a grandmother I related, or I didn't even have a grandmother, but you do. Mm. And the best way to see it is we all love our children so much, but we're the responsible party for our children. But as we all know, when we become grandparents, we're like, oh, they're precious as jewels, right? And I ask you the question, if you crossed over to the other side, would you, if you could, watch over your children and your grandchildren? And wouldn't you want their spirit progression?
Yes.
Because everything that we're about is our spirit progression. Mm-hmm. I think everyone, especially in this group, must know by now that we're not just here as humans. We're here for the human experience, but we are energy and spirit. which is how my dad, he's a spirit man, but that's why it's so important to know your spirit energy, to know your guides and your grandmothers and that are always with you. We always have our crew, you know, and those are for our highest good. Those are the ones that want our spirit progression. They want us to wake up. They want us to know that energy. And so, I mean, it's just a beautiful thing, and this is how I move through time and space.
Yeah.
Every day I begin with spirit and thanking my grandmothers and ancestors and spirit guides. I begin my day by being thankful to them.
That's so beautiful. I remember after my grandmother Helen on my father's side passed, she was from the Russian Orthodox tradition, and so they do believe the ancestors are there actually helping with the saints, sort of, you know, mediating in the in-between.
Yeah.
And I remember in this dream I was just like calling out her name, and I was just yelling for her. I was so like, I was very close with both my grandmothers, and she said, "What? I am right here. You do not need to yell." And she was a little bit pissed off. And I was like, okay, you know.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those interesting moments. And I feel that, you know, because time really isn't linear. We're having a linear experience, perhaps, but it's really not that way. And so there's a sense of that timelessness that, in essence, they're really just right here with us. Right? And what would be different for you? So I just want those of you who are watching at home, and we have a wonderful in-studio audience here at Cosmic Cowgirls today, to just really ask yourself, what beliefs do you have going on about how that works? A lot of the beliefs that we have about how it works were handed to us by culture, religion, family. And it's one of those ones that's difficult to get over because it's regarding life and death. And so there's fear.
Yes.
And so I just ask you to just be for a moment with what have you been believing so far to this moment, and see if you can do a little trace back to where that belief came from. A lot of us can remember the warnings or the invitations. And then to just ponder and just be for yourself, are you open to hearing the stories?
Yeah, it's about being open. And the reason I wanted to talk about ancestral wisdom at this point is because this is that moment in time. This is really that moment in time where, I mean, these are tough times. Anyone can admit that. And this isn't about religion. This isn't about dogma. It's about your true spirit, the truth of you. And, you know, for way over 30 years now, I've been, you know, empowering or trying my best to bring circle and empower women and girls, and certainly bridge the gap of native and non-native, because we all have something to give each other.
Yes.
And I believe in the rainbow tribe. I believe in women. I believe that we have a chance to turn this around, but it's the women. And you see how women are standing now in such a good way. And this is just our time to show our ancestors and step up to the plate. I mean, we know we're living once again in this human existence, but if we don't get about the ancestors and our own spirit and the truth of us, what is the truth of us? This is what we live in, because we're here having this experience to learn and grow. I think people want to come back again, and I hear people say, next time I'm going to come back. Well, I don't say that. I'm like, I think I'm done. I'd rather be helping on the other side by this point in my life, after many lives, I think. You know, and the thing is, when you cross over to that and go, okay, I am open to being with I want to feel you. I want to know you. See, you live a different life, because I have to say, from all my years of living, knowing my grandmothers and ancestors are here holding me, then I can get up and do my prayers in the morning. And when I do ceremony, as you know, I don't write anything, I don't plan anything, because why? Each group of women have that energy. And then I am told, what do they need? You know how, like, when I do my songs at the end, the songs are always different. Because I have my Colombian, Peruvian, Apache, Cherokee, like, they're all coming in, and they're telling me what is needed for this group. So, yes, it's you, because it's part of you, but it's also them. And we need to all access that. We are at a really crucial time in our world, and we need to hold it together, and we need to open to more aspects than this is, because then it seems so ugly and scary, and there's a lot of fear going on.
And the beliefs that we've been holding rigid, even after we've left some institutionalized patriarchal construct, we still are like, it's still residual. There's still this residual default setting of fear about what's going to happen if we go into an unknown domain. And I'm like, okay, well, whoever my creator is, which I have no idea, they certainly have room for me asking impossible questions about what it is that we're doing here and how I can best be of service. And we've had the gift of having Carmen, Baraka, spirit warrior, and Denise, her partner, Buffalo woman, serve and be a part of our community for over 8 years as teachers and guides in the Color of Woman training and also Cosmic Cowgirls. And so we've been able to really learn a lot and do a lot of healing in our community, because most of the people in our community still are from European and other descent. We're not natives of this geography. And so I'm curious, you know, what would you say to those of us who have actually a fear of connecting with our ancestors, not just because our grandma wasn't nice, but because they're, you know, most of our ancestors, like almost everywhere, have been either massacred or been a part of a massacre. It's part of the history of our people, unfortunately. So sometimes I'm like, wow, if I go, you know, I know like 3 back, but further than that, I'm like, I don't know what those people were doing. And so how do people feel safe being in inquiry about that? And then how do you also perhaps set up some protection so that you don't kind of, you know me, I'm pretty guarded, actually. I'm not very available to anything coming my way, other people's energy or guides or spirits. Like, no, like I'm like right here. If you can't get to me here, then forget it, because I want what's coming through to be pure. So I'm pretty rigid about it. But I've created a lifetime of creating that kind of structure for myself so that it's how it's right for me. But a lot of times people are just like, letting it come in, open all the doors. How would people call on and make a request to be in connection with their ancestors, but also set up the protection? Because there's some other not so lovely beings around as well in the ancestor world. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this. Yes, there's all kinds of entities and energies out there. There's no doubt about it. There's negative and positive in everything. You're just never, that's life. That's life. That's beyond life. It's all, you know, the cosmos, everything is all combination. And I've heard this before, that people are like, fear, like, well, I don't know, I had some gnarly ancestors. I don't want them coming through. However, look at us. We are good ancestors, right? We are. We will be good, right? So there's the good, the bad, and the ugly always, right? But there's plenty of good. So those are the ones you call in.
So you might make a specific intention, right?
Yeah. So like, I would say, I mean, it's really, there's plenty of amazing grandfathers. It's not that the male doesn't come in. The grandfathers are normally there for the males. But I mean, look at my sister's dad, who was there every night. So of course, your dad, of course, you still have, but I'm talking basically, you have more of the feminine with you, the grandmothers, but of course, there's also the grandfathers. And what I would say is, so I always begin with sage, just to give you a quick, because this is very important if you want to contact your mother, your grandmothers, your ancestors. You burn some sage and you do a prayer. You do a prayer that works for you, whatever your dogma is, whatever your energy is. And what you want to make sure you say is, I'm asking for your help. I want to know you in a deeper way so that I can have gratitude to give back to you, because you are here for me. I feel you. But I only want those that are for my benefit, those that care for me with love and generosity and want my spiritual progression. I don't allow any other energies in. When you set that precedence, that nothing happens. There's nothing, you don't have to worry. You're protected because you have set your intention. And that's how that really works. It's like with anybody else, even if you're here in the real world and somebody's talking, I'm like, dude, back off, which I will do. But it's the same kind of thing. You set your space. Just like you're like, no, just no. You keep it beautiful. And this is so important right now because I'm more than ever being called by my grandmothers and ancestors. It's strong. I feel it. Like I'm vibrating like this all the time. And I know it's a time for people to realize, like, okay, here's what we do know. We come in naked and alone, and we leave here naked and alone. So whose responsibility is it for us to find that place of time and space? When I get to the light, I want to have my last stepping stone be into the light. I want to know that I have lit myself and I will merge with that light. Then there's no fear. There's no fear if you don't have all this apprehension of like, oh, and that's got nothing to do with like your dogma. This is like pure, no matter who you are in this day and age, we are all energy. We are energy. You and I do this all the time. We think of each other like, bam, we're just always that's why prayer, when we pray when we say, I will pray for you, it's seconds away, right? It's the way I was loving my dad and sending that energy and knowing he was there. Why? Because my vibration, my energy went to his, and I said, he is there. He's, I knew right? So who doesn't want to be better with that? We all need to be better with that. And this is the time when we all need to be taking the time to get there. To get who our group is, because there's going to be some gnarly times ahead. I'm not talking about the end of days, even though it can feel like it sometimes. It's not about that. It's about what if we still live here? How will we get from the darkness to the light? And it's not by being fearful and putting our light out. When the light workers have fear and freak out, we've lost this cause. Seriously, because that's what happened. It's like you're all in your power, but then gnarly stuff starts going down and you're like, ooh, right? We have to be warrior women and stand up, and men, and just say, enough.
That's right.
We're fighting back to save this. We are not going to let this happen. And that's where it's at.
And it's a time also that we talk about this a lot too, of just not avoiding suffering of others. There's this thought, sort of almost a new agey kind of thought, that if you're with people who are suffering or people who are low or walking in the shadows, that it's going to get on you, so we avoid that. And then there's a lot of people authentically who are, empaths or sensitives. But we've really been calling in our community for everyone to strengthen up.
Step it up.
And do what you need to do to create the resiliency in community, because we can't afford for the ones who are awake to be so impacted by suffering that we then look away. So we pray for the strength to be able to sit with death and sit with change and sit with the suffering and be one of the ones who doesn't lose your shit, basically.
That's what I'm saying.
Or you do, but then you just keep coming back anyway.
That's what I mean. You get back up. You get back up. We are protecting this beautiful Mother Earth. Get back up. And the reason I'm talking about this, the ancestral wisdom, is because this is what will pull us through. Tapping into this energy, stop thinking that we're in our little human selves and, oh no, this is coming. When you go beyond that, you lose fear. I have no fear about that. I'm sad. Okay. That's a difference.
Yeah.
You're hurt for Mother Earth. You're hurt for the way our society is moving through time and space right now. That's okay. But you can't close down. I hear some people go, I'm not even watching the news anymore. I don't want. Well, do you not know you're still feeling it?
It's happening anyway.
I mean, driving into this area, coming back after my dad, I could feel the hurt and pain. The pain is still here. You can't hide from that. You can maybe not watch the news, but it's still there. Because we're energy.
And we are in that collective experience. And so what I'm hearing you really point to is to navigate the future that we're creating right now, that drawing upon the support of the people who have gone before and who have seen it all and who have a fresh perspective. And maybe they weren't amazing in this lifetime, but hopefully every once in a while when I think of Sue, our art ancestor, like oh, if I'm going to do something wrong and she's going to get mad at me. And I go, oh my gosh, she's so transcended being mad at me.
Exactly. I mean,
what I'm going to do or not do.
That is, you know what? That's a really key point in spirit that I do know of. So no matter where your beloved was in their headspace, you're like, oh, I know how they felt. No. The whole thing about when you cross over, that's when you go, oh. Oh, and you look back over your life and you understand that, like, and then you can make amends. And many times you make amends by helping that person that you've injured. So it's never like they don't have that attitude anymore. And I can only go from being in Sweat Lodge and seeing spirit and feeling spirit and always, you know, I've felt a lot of spirit in my life. And so I kind of have a feel for what that energy is. And it seems to me always that you cross over and you get it. And that's why people come back. They're like, oh, wait, I got it now. I got it, you know. I just would have done that and that, you know, and then, yeah, so.
Well, I'm wondering if we can talk about a touchy subject, which we often talk about not in
I
front
love
of
touchy
others.
subjects.
And it's something that's, you know, always been up, but it's really up now about cultural appropriation, especially in North America, of, you know, the sort of what my African-American friends would call the exoticization. I don't know how to say that word here. Exoticization. I don't know. It's where you exoticize the other cultures.
I get it.
And you
Good
take
word.
on, you want to do what they're doing. And I always remember this, my pastor, she's like, you know, you and your girl, you're just, you know, making us into the thing. I'm like, you are the thing for me.
Yeah.
Like, I actually want to be amazed and be with you and dance with you and be where you are.
Yeah.
How do I reconcile that for myself? And I think that's the same with what's happening. People are recognizing that the people who are closest to this particular, I'm just talking here because this is where I live,
Yeah.
this continent, feel the draw to work with the Native American wisdom. And, you know, you can just Google where to find your feather fan and you can just find it for $25.99 on some other, you know, like it's become a commodification, just like so many images of the feminine have become commodified. And a lot of the Native American people are saying, you know, hey, you're not, or Latina and African American, don't take our stuff. And if you haven't been trained and right? And so when you came into our community, I was like, okay, great. Now Carmen's going to do it. I'm not even going to do the saging. I'm not going to do the stuff that I used to do, even though I was raised alternately in tons of Native American communities and was smudged many times. I was smudged before I was baptized. So I was really raised in that culture here and had many Native grandmothers who picked me up and was like, okay, Mihai, you're going to learn this. And yet when you came, I was like, okay, Carmen's going to do this and I'm going to do my thing, right? So when you say to burn the sage or to call on the ancestors, a lot of people are doing that in the Native way. And you know the story that even I went to Denmark to do a circle and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a circle with the white people and I don't have to feel bad about anything, right? Okay, this is my one chance to like see how they do it. Burning sage, they had brought the Native and Peruvian traditions all the way to Denmark. I'm like, okay, so this is happening. So what would you say to, how do we, especially you who are a rainbow, you know, bridging the worlds, how do we really be appropriate to this? I mean, what do we do?
Yes, I have a lot of thoughts on that,
I
so
know,
I'll try
I
and
know.
narrow it down. Because I don't want non-Native people to feel chastised and feel really bad, like, oh, you know, I know I shouldn't, you know. There's a degree, there's a sensibility there. You know, okay, so part of what I believe is we live on Native land. We are all on Native land. So however you got here, we're all here. And we are now, hopefully, the rainbow tribe. But a lot of people tell me that are non-Native. They say, Native people come to me. I have spirit guides like they. And I'm not surprised at that. I don't think that's unusual. Millions and millions of Native people were taken out on this land. Beautiful spirit people. They're still holding that spirit in Mother Earth in a good way. And they help all people. That's what Native people do. No matter what was done to them. So, I mean, and I get that. And I don't think it hurts to have Native culture. And I also, you know, we've had many lives. I know that I've been Indigenous and been Native many other times myself. So when people come to me and say, I just feel Native, like that's a past life thing. You know, when someone's Irish and they want everything Egyptian, that's a past life thing. But you have to go with where are you at this life, so you can love those things. The thing that I take issue with is when people go beyond, when they start wearing the headdresses and go to the tribe and learn the pipe ceremony, and then they're going to go teach the pipe ceremony. Like, there's a lot of non-native people that go to Sundance, and I was one of the people that fought to let them come. I said, what if they're our ancestors? We can't go by what they look like now. We need people to love our culture so that we can bridge that gap and we can get help. We need people to know what's really happening with us. What I absolutely don't agree with is, like, take that and use some of that within your group. But do not go out in the world chanting our chants. Like, this is not your lineage. You cannot chant someone else's chants. You cannot take their Sundance songs. If you do it in the context of song, you're joining, you're learning, you're being. But then to take that and go, now I'm going to do this ancestral song. What? That is not you have no right. So I used to use this little story for non-native people. How would you like it if you had this necklace in your family that went for generations from your grandmothers, your sacred grandmother necklace? It's your lineage. Stories are behind it, right? And it's like almost your turn to get this from your mother. Your mother passes away, and your father gets a stepwife, right? And she gets the family necklace. And then she goes out telling everyone about the family and the lineage and her necklace, and you're just like, what? How would that feel? You would be ill. You would be ill. I mean, really think about what that necklace feels to your family. And that's what it feels like when it's misappropriated. So there's aspects you can use that you can honor. I don't think that there's any reason you can't burn sage and have ceremony and stuff. But also, if you're going to do much of that, at least get your people to understand, the land we live on here where we're doing this ceremony, this is Apache land.
Yeah.
And maybe we could give a portion of what we're making, any portion, to help in that way, because we're using that culture. It doesn't have to be the huge main thing, but, come on.
Be respectful. And
Yeah.
there's a map where you can actually look up, for United States and Canada at least, where you can find out who are the indigenous people where you live. You can also look back and discover who are the indigenous people, because you one time were indigenous to somewhere. It's just that we're further away, generation-wise, and we're further away from our motherland. And we can't necessarily go back, a lot of us, right? So we got to find a way to be here. So for me, it's a mixing when I was really able to look at my ancestry and my DNA and see that all my ancestors also painted on drums and were prayer people. I was like, no wonder I've been painting on drums since I was so young. And I could say to my Native American friends, my ancestors also, we did this. But I had to do the work, and I had to go there, and I had to do the research, and I had to do the understanding, and I had to look up the images and the symbols and the codes and have an understanding of where that came from. And then we could have a conversation.
Yes, and it's a simple thing of honoring each other.
It is.
I honor all of my friends. I honor your lineage and your people. But in the end, look where we're at. And we really need to bring this together. I just was in Arizona and was invited by an amazing woman who she just holds space for all Apache people and women. She knows the language. She's amazing. Her name's Sandra. And she invited me to San Carlos Apache Reservation, which is where my grandmother lived, my great-grandmother and my grandmother. And for the sunrise ceremony, which is where a girl becomes a woman. Amazing 4 days of dance and ceremony. I just want to say, I wish we had a world where all young women got to do this, and men. What a difference it would make to have your whole community hold you and do prayer for you and it's just I don't know if you saw the pictures I put on Facebook, but how amazing to go from girl to woman and embrace yourself that way and to be honored as a woman right from the gate. How would that feel? And in spite of the atrocities that all Native people have been through, their love and grace is amazing. Buffalo woman and I were there, and I was actually invited to join the Eagle Clan. And I'm now actually a part of that Eagle Clan. And that means everything to me. I could feel my grandmothers just being appeased that I was back home again. So, I mean, their ceremony, see, that's the difference. And I feel so grateful to be invited to them because I'm an urban Indian. I don't go through the pain. Those women are so strong. I'm so proud to be of that lineage because you can feel the ancestral pain in them. You can feel it. I feel it. I want you to know that because even though I'm like the urban Indian, I feel, it's proven. You carry ancestral energy in you. Your genetic code carries. So sometimes people are like, well, I have a great life and everything's fine, but there's always something that I'm feeling that's like this angst. Recognize that happens because fear, pain, you've been through this, like sometimes you're just like, what is that? That's like your own beingness recognizing your genetic code. They did this experiment a few years ago, and I'm sure it's progressed past there. I mean, it's something we already know, but it's a good example. So they had these mice, and they put electrodes on them. And then they put some cherry blossoms in the middle of the cage. And then when they'd go to smell the cherry blossoms, they'd put the electrodes, and, the mice would freak out, right? And then, so what they did was the next generation of mice, they put them in the cage, and they were fine, not with the electrodes. And they put the cherry blossoms. The next generation were like, oh.
Yep.
And they did it with the third generation.
Yep.
Same thing. They put them in the cage. Think about that.
Yeah.
Really think about that. And see, this is why I want to talk about ancestralism, because when you have those times, all of us have them, where you're feeling this angst out of nowhere. Have you not had that? I mean, that's a real thing. You're carrying that. You're carrying that pain. I feel the pain. When I spoke at the United Nations, I said this one line. And I said, I don't live on the reservation, but I feel that reservation within me all the time. So I'm feeling my people. I'm feeling what has happened to them. It's always right there. If I talk about it like now, I can feel it in my core.
I'm sure a lot of us can feel it in different ways. I mean, I think the thought of that we really are in occupied territory here is really a difficult thing to stomach, like literally to be with, that we find ourselves here, and that the marginalization of the Native American and Indigenous cultures of Canada, that is still happening. And I'll never forget Carmen our community went to the United Nations, and we had a panel, and Carmen spoke on Native American women, which doesn't happen that much at the United Nations, even at the Commission of Status of Women.
No.
And she was speaking on what's really happening on the reservations, what's really happening in all these women from other countries, all in their, traditional garb, were like lined up to talk to her, and they're like, yeah, we have never even heard of this. We don't even know what you're talking about. We were just like, oh my gosh. And then we had an amazing time because Carmen smudged on the street, and all these people came up, and then she smudged 186, I think, member flags of the United Nations. And we're like, this is the first time this has happened.
All the flags of the United Nations. That was a moment.
It really was. We were doing some work.
I love my picture. I'd never liked pictures of me, but that moment was so powerful. And you just see it in my face holding that sage. I was just like, it's for my people. Like, this just needs to happen. And I just want to address that for a second, that, I think the bones of my ancestors have not been honored.
No.
And you know what? At this point, people, this is the bones of all of your ancestors. My ancestors are your ancestors. Why? Because we, deep within the earth, are the first bones, and they are the ancestors. And to not raise them up, to not honor them, to not apologize, to not do any, that's a karmic thing. And here we are. Yeah. I'm just saying, We in America spend our time pointing at other countries like, look at the atrocities those people do to the. It's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You know,
Just knowing where we are. I remember when I sent out the email during Standing Rock that I believed we were occupied territory, and I sent out the map to show.
that was great.
And
I would love that.
people were just
to show
so
people.
freaked out that I would even, say that. And then the Native friends were like, "Thank you, because if we say that, it's going to give us a lot of trouble." But that is where we live, and so when you see what's happening in, the United States today, when you think of it in terms of a family. Like in your family, if you have a really bad family secret, no matter how many generations or how much you try to bury it, it's just going to keep coming up, and it's going to keep coming up because of the cherry blossoms, because it's all in there.
Exactly,
anyway.
the cherry blossom factor, let's just call it that. And this is really true.
And so how can we be okay here if we
Yeah.
have not really reconciled?
I just think, and I've thought for a very long time, an apology, an acknowledgement. I want to say one thing that's always been in my heart,
Say
a
it.
wish that when those first people arrived here and actually thought that we were just like such savages and such idiots because we gave them everything and we honored women, and they just thought these people are losers. They don't have any greed. They don't have it. Like, what's the matter with these people? They're brainless. Like, there's gold here. I just always had this dream since I was a child, that what would have happened if they could have just been, okay, you're going to take your land, we're going to put you in, let us have some of the beautiful land, put us on the worst land, the cruelty. What would have just simply happened if we said, yeah, we're all going to be living here now, but we're going to honor you like they do in other countries. You go to Germany and they got their little outfits because that's the German thing, right? Like, how beautiful could have it been if people from all over the world, when they come to visit America, could go to the reservations and do sweat lodge and learn wisdom and learn how to care for Mother Earth. Indigenous people are still taking care of Mother Earth, and they have barely anything, but they're still losing their homes. They're being killed every day trying to save the last of the rainforest, the last of the mountains, right? We've been fighting for Oak Flat in Arizona. It's the last sacred place left. I can't even begin to tell you how beautiful that land is. And John McCain and what is that other guy? I can't think of his name right now, but they helped these miners from like Australia. They're going to make billions. They're all going to get insanely rich, and I mean the most pure water. Apache people have been doing ceremonies there since the beginning of time. And they want to dig it unbelievable, deep minerals, take it all out, and then sell it to China. So they're going to make billions, and they're going to devastate this land where we have ceremony. And you know what? All over near that Apache reservation is mining. And it's just ruined everywhere. This is the last sacred place. And then they're just going to ruin it. And
that's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
So the relative being okayness is really swirled with this situation. And then you think of they gave the reservations the worst possible land. Meanwhile, what's in that land is what they then ended up wanting.
They gave them land that you couldn't grow vegetables on. You couldn't, it was just the worst land. They're like, yeah, nobody wants this land. Well, now it's the land that has all the minerals and copper, and we have a lot of copper in Arizona. So
one of the things that can happen, I know that happens for us, is that we can definitely get bogged down and discouraged by the knowing. Like, just knowing that is enough to just wipe me out. I remember waking up in my 20s and saying to the Great Mother, I was like, okay, now I understand why people are asleep, because how can you know and live? There's a sense of being awake. Actually, it can feel a little bit like a death when you first wake up and you come to realize what's actually happening in the world, and you have to reconcile living your life with the awareness of the extreme betrayal that most of us are living in. One of the comforts that we take, obviously, is we do a lot of ceremony.
Yeah.
We also party and have dinner parties a lot. We eat, we dance. we celebrate a lot. And one of the other things for me is understanding nature more, like at the level of science and energy, that water, when it's traveled the wrong way for water, changes how it functions. But then if you put it back into the way that it moves in the vertical way, it actually regains itself.
Yeah.
And you think of things in nature that repair themselves all the time. The streams that repair themselves.
If it just has a chance to repair.
If it just has a chance to repair itself, it will repair itself. And so I have faith when the doomsday say, we can never go back because we've already come this far. It's like, do not underestimate the power of water and of earth and of plants.
And the healing. Mother Earth is the healer of all things. But
so we actually know that those codes, everything on Earth has been designed with this information to restore itself, including our own physical bodies. But we're in a point in our journey where we're having a hard time even really accessing how that works.
Yeah, yeah.
So what would you say to those who are lovers and servers and healers who just the knowing just makes us want to get back in bed and pull the covers over our head?
Well, I would say that take the covers off and get out of bed, because people, we're talking about our lives here. We're kind of down to the line. I'm not trying to be like a doomsday kind of person, because I'm not. I believe always in the light. But pulling the covers up is dark. And it's our moment in time. It's our moment to be with the ancestors, to understand energy and how it works, and to fight the good fight. I just want to say that does happen. Mm-hmm. They're stifled. You can't move. There's so much going on, right? But go out in nature. Like, nature is the healer. Go out in nature and be with Mother Earth. Be with Grandmother Spirit. Watch the critters and the winged beings and the ravens fly overhead. I mean, I'm so fortunate that I live in a forest of redwoods, and I have an opening where I do ceremony and the ravens fly over my head. And, but you don't have to be in that place. Just go out there. Nature's for all of us. Everyone can find nature. And that is the healer. Mother Earth is the healer. But we have to heal each other. And in reference to Native people, I would just say, pay attention to where it was your closest reservation. Help in any way. It's time. That's a healing in that. Mm-hmm. Just to agree, just to say, that's true, and stop hiding that, like, the acknowledgement is a healing, right? If you have a partner and you have a big argument, like, I'm really sorry, goes a long way. Mm-hmm. Just think about it as a couple. Just think about it energetically as a couple. If I decide I'm not going to say I'm sorry, you're not going to say you're sorry, and you're just like this all day, you know what that energy feels like, and that's just two of you. What that energy of that person's not apologizing and they're holding, that is like so intense. And that's what we're doing every time we turn our head. There are Native people out there that don't have running water or electricity. That's an atrocity.
Yeah, and it's still being set up to keep them down. I mean,
they want all the land back. That's what's happening. And they want all Native people to die out. They still want that.
The liquor stores are the closest food source.
I want to be very clear about that while we're talking about Native people, because I've heard people say, oh, Native people, they're a bunch of drunks. And yeah, you do realize back in the day when the military was there, they would get food rations and they would go, oh, I want to take this for my family. We need these food rations. And they would just get them gut-wrenching whiskey and give them that. Well, Native people, all culture, all Irish, any kind of culture, they make booze. Everybody's figured out. Not Native American people. That is not natural to them. So bringing that in, and people are like, yeah, we're a bunch of alcoholics. Well, how would you feel if your wife and daughter were raped, and your kids were taken to school, and their hair was cut, and your land was taken? As a man, and even a woman, I mean, come on. Wouldn't you drink? Like, what keeps you from that? What audacity do you have to have? I mean, look at these American kids. They'll do drugs for any reason. Oh, school's hard. Come on, really? Yeah. We're talking,
and it's
this is something to really look at.
It's really enforced, too. That's one of the points I want to make. Like, they really put those liquor stores there and provide that cheap liquor.
No food for outside some reservations, but 5 liquor stores.
And the same thing in the African American communities, huge introduction of bad drugs. And that's when it got started. It was introduced by the United States government, not the communities at large. So you really want to look at how these stories get started.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad I got to address that, because that's really an important factor. But what I'm saying is ancestral wisdom. I mean, we're bringing all that in because these are for all of us. I'm talking about my ancestors and Native people, but that's for all of us.
Yeah.
We're here on this land.
Yeah.
And this is what we're doing. Yeah. So let's address that. Let's be real. And let's bring in our ancestors and our grandmothers in a good way, because I want to just make that really strong. I know my team. I can feel them. I'm empowered by that. I have no fear because of that. This is why I want all people to get that, to understand that. Speak to your grandmother. You're not alone. This thing of feeling alone, I'm depressed, I'm alone. You're not alone. But if you don't recognize, you don't grow. Mm-hmm. See, that's the thing. Well, people say, well, what about the people that are just all messed up? Well, they aren't listening. They've chose to go to the dark side. But that doesn't mean they don't have those spirit beings there for them.
So the acknowledgement and intentional participation, it's not just going to happen. Sometimes it happens, but to really have a relationship with
you can't see someone if you don't look.
I remember when I first started going to the church of my ancestors, the Russian Orthodox Church, in the very beginning, and they were like, well, how did you get here? And I was like, well, my great-great-grandfather was a Russian Orthodox priest. And they're like, oh, well, you are here because of the prayers of your ancestors. They prayed you here. And I always remember that moment and just being like, oh, right. The generations before prayed for survival, prayed for their offspring, prayed in a way that we don't pray now. Even for the children in the same way, that they would have that thrive and that they would last into the next 7 generations. Almost all of our ancestors, wherever they were trying to keep children alive and trying to keep culture alive.
Exactly.
And now, where are we? Are we mostly thinking about just ours and how we're going to get ours? Or are we actually
This is the problem. This is how we are, is ours, and how we're going to get ours. This is the problem. We need to be in circle and ceremony, in ritual, in all that our ancestors once held. Like we all know, because we've been in circle many times, the power of women in circle that are holding space and opening their hearts and minds. Like that is what it's about. And
I feel like it has to be learned. This is something I've been working with lately. During the fire thing, I was sort of like moving back and forth between I got to take care of myself and I got to take care of everyone else, and I was like really like this push and pull, and actually had a hard time taking care of myself because I was so outward focused. I was almost obsessed. Yeah. If you ever read my new poem about obsession, I was obsessed with what was happening with everyone else.
Everyone should read that poem.
And I realized that I wasn't able to focus on myself. And then when everyone's saying, like, I'd done enough, I could do enough, then I dropped into myself, and I felt that feeling. I've been working with community for 25 years, so it's uncommon for me to drop into myself and really be like, okay, what do I really need? Because I have so much support that I don't actually have to feel that survival very often. And I had that feeling of like, I got to make sure that I'm okay. And I had that flash of like, we don't really, unless you run community and you've had that call, we don't really have a lot of language or emotional understanding of what it is to care for the collective or care for the generations. Mm-hmm. It's almost like we don't have a language for it, so we don't even know how to talk about it. And so how do we even summon this new emotional set which gives a shit beyond what you have? And I think that's what you're saying, like that circle is a part of that. But there's something more I want us to begin exploring as a community of like, how are we going to develop the emotional awareness of care that goes beyond ourselves, but that isn't self-sacrificing and or is not all about helping at the level that you are diminishing others so that you can help them. Because that's a thing too that the Native Americans are sick of dealing with, like the helpers, right? Where you're trying to lift them up, and there's like this way that we approach.
Yes.
And so there's a way to watch that too. I have to watch that myself in my desire to serve.
Yeah.
And so there's so many things to watch out for right now, and all of us are on a journey together. And I encourage you to discover the reservations that are near where you live, to make friends with women from other cultures and ask them, as I have asked Carmen over and over, what is the best way for us to manage this inside of our own community, inside of our own relationship, to ask I ask her questions that would just be crazy to ask because I really want to know, and I really do have a desire to be appropriate and to serve with her.
Thank you so much for that, Shiloh. And I just want to say quickly that I'm really proud of women who are doing the Me Too thing.
Yeah.
Women are finally standing for each other after so long of how we've been abused. Oh my God. I am so grateful for this moment in time for our girls. I feel like, back in we are thousands deep with our swords held up, and the men are in the castle there, metaphorically. We are not, we're not brutal in that way. But I mean, we're standing there and we're telling those men, control your willies. Okay? We've had it. We're done. We're done. Enough. We are not going to let you hurt us, our children, our daughters. This is over. You guys figure this out, because we are not going to let this happen anymore. And I want to say I'm so happy about that, because that will bring equality when you can go, do you like your job? Because enough. I've had enough of this injuring of women and girls. Yeah. So I just want to say that from my heart to all women out there, let us stand and speak our truth, because that's happening, and it's going to shift this paradigm. And I am incredibly grateful for this moment in time, finally here.
Yeah, that's right. And it's the culture is changing right now with the exposure of the really high level men.
It's happening everywhere.
Men who have been abused and women coming out of the woodworks and just finally saying this has happened.
Enough.
And so let there be fear in the corporations and in the places where this has been allowed as a culture, because it's happening in Google. It's happening. It's
everywhere. This is what's going to happen. It's going out. It's just once it's all known. That's our power, because it's the power to say no. I don't think so.
Long, though?
No, it's pain. Right? I can't even go there.
We won't even go there. Well, let's have a little red road here. We're going to have a little red thread, as we do in our community. And the red thread is something that is in most major spiritual traditions and lands. And I first learned about it with one of my Native mothers, Tonanseen, when I led one of my first red thread circles many years ago. And it's the sign of connection. So it's a visual, literal sign of connection. But where you are, I'm extending the thread to each of you. I invite you to imagine that you're truly connected to this circle, and to us, if you choose to be, that you're with us and that we really are in this circle. And we're at a time in the unfolding of history where it's wonderful to be together in circle, but now we're really learning the power of quantum circle, that you can actually choose to be a part of this fabric, right? That we're together, that you're not separated. So allow yourself to be included. And in the strength of that, should you feel called to call upon your ancestors in a way that works for you. And if you need support, you can always show up in the Red Thread Cafe classroom and ask others, and there's lots of well-meaning women in there to support you. So I want to thank you so much for serving our community all these years, all the ceremony that we've done together, the good work that we've done with the women. I know that Color of Women School, all of our close to 200 graduates, thanks you for really catalyzing us and teaching us. Both of you have been such a gift to all of us as we really learn to initiate ourselves. It's a time of self-initiation in circle.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, and I just want to say Aho Matakwe, which means we are all related.
Amen. Thank you for that. Aho. Cheers. Want one loop?
Yeah.
Okay. Too much. Get too much. Make a whole sweater.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.